Welcome to Zeitgeist. I'm Zuri, that's Alistair, and today we're covering something that could reshape the entire Middle East.
Yeah, this one's serious. Let's get into it.
So Iran is on fire right now, and I don't mean that metaphorically. We're talking about the biggest challenge to the Islamic Republic since it was founded in 1979.
Okay, I've seen the headlines. But what actually started this? Because it seemed to come out of nowhere.
It started with shopkeepers. December 28th, merchants in Tehran's Grand Bazaar, which is like the economic heart of the city, they just walked out, closed up shop, started marching, and the reason was simple. They couldn't afford to live anymore.
What do you mean, couldn't afford to live?
The Iranian rial collapsed, catastrophically. It lost 80% of its value in a single year. To put that in perspective, a year ago, $1 got you about 300,000 rials. Now it's 1.4 million. Your savings, your salary, everything just evaporated.
So people's money just became worthless overnight?
Basically. And on top of that, inflation hit 50% overall. But for food, 70%. Cooking oil, meat, basic staples. Suddenly, luxury items. People who had jobs, who did everything right, couldn't feed their families.
And that's what pushed people into the streets.
That's what lit the match. But here's the thing. The kindling had been building for years. Decades of corruption. Sanctions choking the economy. Oil prices dropped 20%, which crushed their main source of income. Water shortages, power outages, youth unemployment through the roof. Pension funds running dry. It was a pressure cooker. And the lid finally blew.
So how big did these protests actually get?
Every single province, all 31 of them, confirmed protests in at least 187 cities and towns, and what started as fix the economy very quickly became remove the supreme leader. People weren't just asking for relief, they wanted the whole system gone.
And how did the government respond?
This is where it gets dark, really dark. They responded with overwhelming force. Live ammunition, machine gun fire into crowds, and the death toll, it depends on who you ask, but the numbers are horrifying either way.
What are we talking about?
Activist groups who verify deaths individually have confirmed close to 4,000, but leaked government documents, internal reports from the Revolutionary Guard and the Interior Ministry, suggest the real number is somewhere between 27,000 and 36,000 dead in less than a month.
Wait, 36,000? That's a small city.
And the methods are just as disturbing. There are reports, corroborated by medical personnel, of security forces entering hospitals and executing wounded protesters in their beds. Patients hooked up to cardiac monitors, shot in the head. They're calling them finishing shots.
I don't even know what to say to that.
Videos have leaked showing body bags lined up in makeshift morgues, over 200 in one location near Tehran alone. But here's the problem. We can't fully verify a lot of this because the government cut the internet. There's been a near-total blackout since mid-January.
So we're getting bits and pieces through the blackout.
Exactly. Satellite phones, VPNs, people smuggling footage out. But the regime knows what they're doing. Darkness is their friend right now.
Okay, so where does the US come into this? Trump's been saying a lot.
He has. He said, help is on the way to the protesters. He's threatened strong military action. He announced 25% tariffs on any country that does business with Iran, and he's been briefed on a full menu of options: airstrikes, cyber attacks, psychological operations.
But he hasn't actually done anything yet?
Not militarily, no. And there's a reason for that. The targets they'd want to hit, Revolutionary Guard command centers, besiege headquarters, the forces actually doing the killing, they're all in populated areas, civilian neighborhoods. You bomb those, you kill regular Iranians. The same people protesting.
So a strike could actually backfire?
Massively. It could turn the protesters against the US, give the regime a propaganda win. Look, America is attacking your country. Suddenly the narrative shifts from our government is killing us to we're under foreign attack. That's the nightmare scenario.
And what's Iran saying about all this?
The regime is doing two things at once. Publicly, they're calling protesters enemies of God, which, by the way, is a charge that carries the death penalty. The supreme leader dismissed them as vandals trying to please Trump. They announced 3 days of mourning for security forces they called martyrs.
They're framing it as an outside attack.
100%. Iranian national battle against the US and Israel. That's the official line. And they've made threats too. Iran's parliament speaker warned that if the US attacks, both Israel and American military bases in the region become legitimate targets.
So we could be looking at a wider regional conflict?
That's the fear. Iran still has ballistic missiles. They still have proxy networks, even if they're weakened. An American strike could trigger retaliation that pulls in Israel, destabilizes Iraq, puts US troops at risk across the Middle East.
Okay, but here's the big question everyone's asking. Could the regime actually fall? Like, is this really the end?
So analysts have been looking at this really closely, and there's a framework for when regimes collapse, 5 conditions that need to be present. And Iran right now, they meet almost all of them.
Walk me through it.
First, fiscal crisis. Check. The economy is in freefall. Second, divided elites. Check. Every living former president is either under house arrest, silenced, or marginalized. The regime has contracted into a tiny circle around Khamenei. Third, a broad opposition coalition. Check. You've got merchants, students, workers, women, all united against the system.
That's 3 out of 5.
Fourth, a clear resistance narrative. Check. These aren't reform protests anymore. People are calling for complete overthrow. And fifth, international vulnerability. The airstrikes last June took out a lot of Iran's military capability. Their nuclear program was set back. Their proxy networks are weaker than they've been in years.
So all 5 conditions are there?
Pretty much. A former CIA analyst called this the biggest moment in Iran since 1979. He said the regime has a narrowing window to reassert control and a diminished toolset to do it.
But there's a but coming, isn't there?
There's always a but. The opposition is fragmented. There's no clear leader. Reza Pahlavi, the son of the former Shah, is the most visible figure, and he's been calling for change from the US, but he's divisive. A lot of Iranians don't want a return to monarchy. Key opposition leaders are still in prison. There's no unified plan for what comes after.
So even if the regime is weak, there's no one ready to catch the fall?
That's the concern. One analysis put it bluntly. This might just be the end of the Islamic Republic, but the Iranian opposition could still blow it.
What happens if it does collapse? Like, what does that even look like?
Best case, a managed transition to something more democratic. Worst case, think Libya, Syria. A power vacuum that gets filled by competing factions, militias, maybe even ISIS remnants. Iran has ethnic minorities, regional tensions. It could fracture, and that chaos would ripple across the entire Middle East.
So even regime change isn't necessarily good news?
It depends entirely on how it happens and who's ready to lead. Right now, no one has a clear answer, and that uncertainty is part of why the US is hesitating. You don't want to push a regime off a cliff if you have no idea what's at the bottom.
So where does that leave us? What should people be watching for?
A few things. First, whether the protests can sustain momentum despite the crackdown. The internet blackout makes it hard to organize. Second, any cracks within the regime itself, defections, statements from military leaders, that kind of thing. Third, what Trump actually does. Words are one thing, but action, or inaction, will shape this. And fourth, whether an opposition leader can emerge who actually unites people.
This feels like one of those stories where we're watching history happen in real time.
It really is. Whatever happens next, whether the regime survives, collapses, or limps on wounded, this is a turning point. 45 years of the Islamic Republic, and it's never been this close to the edge.
We'll be watching this one closely. If you want to stay on top of it, hit subscribe. We'll keep you updated as things develop.
Thanks for watching. This is Zeitgeist.